Welcome back, everyone. It's Mr. Brain, your friendly neighborhood gaming dad, and I've got a special treat for you all today. I've promised quite a few people that I would be working on a damage calculator for this game. Now, while I haven't made a user-friendly calculator for this yet, I am still working on something, and if I showed you the Excel document that I was working out of, you'd think I was insane. However, I wanted to, at the very least, show you all my progress and the closest that I've come to understanding how damage is calculated in this game. And I've been basing this off of a few battle reports that I get that are easy to manage as far as the variables are concerned, where I have most, if not all, of the variables covered. So I'm going to pull you over into a slideshow to try and show you how each of these numbers here are calculated, and at least give you a basic formula to work off of so you can know what stats you should be focusing on. So if you'll just give me 1 second, I will present myself in a slideshow to show you what I've come up with. And here we are in a lovely PowerPoint presentation led by yours truly, a handmade Bluey character, and we are going to go over the closest I've come to a damage formula for this game. And this is just a basic damage formula. There are a bunch of minutiae to this, but in its simplest form, this is the easiest I can give you. And okay, that's the video. No, I'm kidding. I will go over what each of these letters mean to try and help you understand how each of them plays into the damage formula itself. Some of them you should be able to recognize or guess, the others not so much. First one we're going to go over is T for troops. This is simply your troop count. There's nothing special about this. This is the number of troops that you brought to the battlefield and how many troops you have at that exact instance of combat. Because remember, this is recalculated every single turn. Next up is A for attack. This is the culmination of all of your attack stats. This is the average of all of your base stats if you decided to bring mixed troops to the field. Your research, your equipment, your skins, items, etc. Any way that you can increase your attack or have your attack lowered later on in the fight, this is where that's calculated. All of that is done and is put into the formula for attack. Defense, exact same way, except it's your enemy's defense stats. All of their base stats, research, equipment, skins, items, etc. And this is where defense has a little bit of a leg up on you, because they have two stats to work with. Their defense and their HP are both factored against your attack and your troop count. So they can overwhelm you with troop counts, but if they have good stats, they will fare fairly well, and I'm sure you've all seen this in combat before. Here's where things start to get interesting. DB in the formula is your damage buffs. Now, these can come from things like commander skills or equipment. The backpack, for example, giving you attack damage increases and stuff like that. This is the point where counter damage is split from basic attack damage, because what's actually happening is two separate instances of this formula are being created. One for your basic attack damage and one for your counter attack damage, because you do hit twice. If you want to see this, expand on each of those instances of combat and you'll see two attacks are happening from both sides. One will be higher than the other if you have a basic damage increase versus a counter damage increase. For example, if you're using Regoro on the field, you can count on counter damage being significantly higher than basic damage, just as an example. Now, on the flip side of this is DR, or damage reduction. This is your enemy's damage reduction buffs that can come from similar places, and it's also split here as well. If you have counter damage reduction, it's not going to affect the basic damage dealt to you, and vice versa. So keep that in mind. This is the interesting one, and probably the reason why this has taken me so long, and I still have not fully figured it out. This is a coefficient that changes during combat to try and slow down high troop count fights, because the numbers that we've given are fairly large, and speed up low troop count fights, because if your troop count is like 300, 400 factored in your attack against their defense and HP stats, you'd be doing next to nothing. And you do still do next to nothing, but you would be doing a lot less. This is the closest I've gotten to it. It looks silly, but 5 being the coefficient that I've come up with that most closely matches it whenever I've done this. I chose square root because it kind of brings things back to the center once troop counts get out of hand in both directions. If you're around 10,000, it's going to be around 1, just multiply it by 5, and it's going to be fairly close to the correct calculation. However, when you start getting into hundreds of thousands of troops, let's just take 10,000 divided by 100,000. You have 1/10 there. The square root of 1/10 is actually lower than 1/10. It brings it back closer to 1 so that it doesn't get out of hand. And if you have only 1,000 troops remaining, square root of 10 is less than 10. It tries to bring it closer to 1 so it doesn't get out of hand, but allows you to speed up or slow down a fight if you have a high troop count or a low troop count. I know this part's kind of confusing. Again, this isn't exact. This is just the closest I've come to it. Flanking damage. Now, the update that we had a couple months back limited the amount of people that could be attacking you at once. I don't know if I've fully tested it myself. I believe I've seen 8 people attacking the same shelter and actually dealing damage. Ant-P'd so much more. But flanking is a 1% increase per enemy attacking the same target. Personally, the highest I've seen is 9% on Ant-P'd. And that's with everybody attacking. If somebody has more information on this one, please let me know in the comments. I'll be more than happy to correct this. I'm still trying to figure out all of the different nuances to combat. I just wanted to share what I've got. And finally, troop advantage. Everyone knows about the combat triangle. Archers are better against infantry because they're slow. Infantry has the defense to tank a rider's charge, and riders can hunt down archers. Fairly simple. If you have troop advantage, you have a 5% increase to your damage, and they have a 5% increase to their damage taken. Only from you. It doesn't make sense why it would be split, because honestly, looking at it, it's a 10% gap. Why isn't it just a 10% increase to damage? But anytime I've tried to split it up in my equation, it's messed it up. Anytime I've tried to not split it up, it's messed up my equation. Not by much, but by enough that it's noticeable. So 5% for you, 5% against them, and it tends to work out. So if you want to think of it as a 10% swing, to make it easier, that works. Just know that it's slightly wrong. Now we're back to the formula itself. Just to go over how this works. The attack, defense, and HP are factored in with troops and equalizer to give you your base damage. All of this is your base damage. This is 100% of the damage you're going to do. This is also why in previous videos I've stated that damage bonuses are much more valuable than attack, defense, or HP buffs because they are straight increases to your damage. Yes, they're factored against your enemy's damage reduction, but I can tell you right now from testing this, a 10% increase to your attack power, to your squad's attack, is not a 10% increase to damage. But a 10% increase to your damage buffs is pretty close. I believe the last time I looked at it, it's a law of diminishing returns here. The higher you get in attack buffs, the lower the bonus in damage you get. And that applies to all three stats. But damage buffs are nice, flat, great increases to go for. Once your damage buffs and damage reductions are factored in, then you get the flanking and troop advantage bonuses. I didn't bother putting any parentheses around this because it all happens one after another, and putting parentheses anywhere didn't change anything for me. But if I messed up anywhere in here, it made a huge difference. Now, granted, I tend to do better in these calculations when the troop amounts on both sides are even. So if you have 200,000 troops and they have 200,000 troops, they tend to work out for damage on both sides. If there's too much of a discrepancy, my equation tends to slip. And the closer I get, the closer I am to making a calculator that people can use to at least be able to determine what the first round of combat is going to be. Sadly, I don't know if it's within my ability to make a calculator that will determine an entire fight. I am working on learning how to code in order to try and make something like that, but that is not going to come anytime soon. But I can at least try and get you something that you can plug your numbers in against maybe an alliance mate or something and see how well you would do against each other and test it out, see if it works. I'm still working on that. I'm a little bit under the weather right now, so please give me some time to work on that. And with Island Raid, I'm not going to be able to devote as much time just to the calculations, but I am working on this. And if you want to see the finished product when I'm done making it, I will be putting it on Patreon and announcing it in both Patreon and in my YouTube channel, as well as on Discord. And with that being said, that's really all I have to say about the damage formula. And just like that, we're back in the game. I hope this video was as informative for you all as it was for me trying to make it. I've been working very hard to try and come up with something that I can present to you all about this. And if you're seeing this video on my YouTube, just know that you could have gotten to this video 24 hours sooner over on my Patreon page. I do drop most of my videos over there first and schedule my YouTube videos to come out 24 hours later. So if you want to get my videos a little bit before anyone else, come support me on Patreon. I'm more than happy to help. If you have any questions or content ideas, please leave them in the comments below. I want to answer your questions. I want to help. And with that being said, this is Mr. Brain, your friendly neighborhood gaming dad, signing off.